أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم إنا نسألك الإخلاص والصدق والصواب في القول والعمل اللهم آمين. Today inshallah we're going to start the first episode, if you want to call it, of Islam's Hall of Fame. And as I mentioned, we're going to be taking one individual every time, talk about for 20 to 30 minutes. And just a disclaimer from the start, we're never going to have enough time to talk about the individual we choose. Every single Sahabi and the heroes of Islam would require, I could honestly do a whole series or a whole week of sessions on one individual. So, but what we're going to do is we might take a portion of that individual's life, some highlights from his life. It depends. It will vary from one person to another, and the key attributes from each person's life. Today's Hall of Famer, if we want to say, is Salman Alfarisi, radiyallahu anhu wa ardah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with him. Salman Alfarisi. Just a quick show of hands. Who knows the story of Salman Alfarisi? Okay, so a few, not much. So it should be interesting for the majority of you. And for those who already know it, we'll look at it from certain angles that will refresh your mind, inshallah, and uplift your spirit to become better people in Ramadan, inshallah. Right off the bat, I want to mention, first of all, three key points that we're going to focus on in the life of Salman Al-Farisi radiallahu anhu. There's a lot of things we could focus on, but the three things I want to focus on and that will highlight throughout his story is his quest for searching for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and searching for knowledge. His quest for searching for Allah. His journey in getting to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala better, and his journey in knowledge. And why did I decide to start with this? Because I think it's the best topic to start Ramadan with. Here we are on the second day of Ramadan. And Ramadan is a journey of spirituality along with other things. But one of the best things about Ramadan is it's a personal journey it's a personal journey for yourself to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to improve yourself and improve your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's why I decided to start with the story of Salman al-Farisi, because it really highlights that aspect of his life. The second point we'll focus on in his story is finding the hints and signals from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. SubhanAllah, yesterday I was walking with the brother Salah Sarsour. We walked to Dunkin' Donuts and eat some donuts and come back almost every day. We're trying to stay in shape as much as we can in that regards. So on the way back, he was telling me something interesting. He was telling me how, SubhanAllah, every single person in his life, and it's true, if you relate to yourself, every single person in his life will have some hints and some moments that will be like signals, you could say, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it's our duty and it's our choice whether we want to grab onto these signals and follow them, or whether we just want to overlook them and continue with our own life. Salman al-Farisi had the same thing. You'll notice throughout his life, he had signals and hints from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, he's dedicated himself and he fought through everything to hold on to these signals and to find his journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's what made him successful. So it's the second thing we'll get from his story and we'll explain throughout. The third element we could learn from his story is how to serve the ummah with whatever we have. A lot of us have different unique capabilities. We come from different backgrounds. We have different strengths. My strengths could be a weakness for you. Your area of weakness could be my strength. So as a collective group, as a collective body, we all need to utilize what we can contribute to this community, to this ummah, and put it at the forefront and serve our community, serve our family, our masjid, our ummah, to uplift it. And if everybody shares, puts in their strengths, they put in their efforts, you'll have a strong, vibrant community, inshallah. So we'll start with the story of Salman al-Farisi. Salman al-Farisi, al-Farisi is not his last name, by the way. Al-Farisi means Persian. Al-Farisi means Persian. His name is Salman, and he was known as Salman the Persian because he's originally from Persia. And his story actually is very, very beautiful. He narrated his story to Abdullah ibn Abbas. Abdullah ibn Abbas is the cousin of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. However, he was a very young Sahabi at the time of the Prophet. He was much younger than the Prophet. And when they were in Medina and Salman became Muslim, Abdullah bin Abbas actually used to study under Salman al-Farisi. Abdullah bin Abbas is, by the way, one of the Prophet ﷺ says he's the most knowledgeable in the Quran. In the Tafsir al-Quran, Abdullah bin Abbas is the most knowledgeable in that regards. And Salman al-Farisi told his story of how he became a Muslim to Abdullah ibn Abbas, who he used to study under him. Because Salman was one of the bigger Sahaba. This was when he was little. So one time he was sitting down with Abdullah bin Abbas radiallahu anhu, and he told him, let me tell you my story. Or maybe Abdullah bin Abbas asked him, can you tell me your story of how you became a Muslim? Because he was probably the only Persian in the Medina that was not Arab, or not from the people of Medina, or not from the people of Mecca, who was a Muslim. So it was something unique to a lot of the Sahaba. You know, how did you end up coming from Persia all the way to Medina and becoming a Muslim? So he narrates a story. I want you to listen to the story now, not from me. Imagine you're listening to the story from Salman al-Farisi himself, because I'm gonna narrate it and paraphrase it, of course, as Salman al-Farisi told it to Abdullah bin Abbas. He told him, I come from a Persian family, from a very religious Persian family that used to worship the fire. The religion was called the Majus. They were called the Majus. They were basically the worshippers of fire. They would worship the fire. And the religion of the Majus was spread throughout the Persian area, which is current day Iran. If you want to say the Persian Empire at that time is current day Iran. And the prominent religion in that area was the Majus, the people of the fire. They would worship the fire. And what would they have in every single village? In every single village, they would have a fire lit up, and the people of that village would worship that fire, and they would make sure that that fire would never turn off. That means somebody would always be taking care of it, igniting it, fueling it with fuel and wood to make sure it's constantly lit up so the people could worship it. So Salman al-Farisi says, I came from a very religious family. My father was one of the richest people in the city. He was one of the wealthiest people in the city, and he had a position of authority in the city. So he was, part of the government, if you want to say it, or one of the leaders or one of the authorities in the city that he lived in. And he said that I was the most beloved to my father, to the extent that he would spoil me more than anybody else, and he would take care of me more than anybody else. That means he was, the spoiled child for his father. From his young days, his father would keep an eye on him. He would make sure, even to the extent that he said, Salman Farisi, he said, I have never left our village, outside of the village. My father wouldn't let me leave the village just out of fear for me, that he was so careful about me. He loved me so much, he didn't let me leave the village. He said, I grew up all the way until I became a young man, never seen anything outside of my village. The only thing I've known was my village. However, everything that I wanted was at my hands, at my disposal. From food, from wealth, from clothing, from whatever it is that I desired, my father would get it for me right away, and he would take care of me. And he said our family was a religious family. We were a religious family to the extent that Salman himself got appointed as the keeper of the fire. The keeper of the fire is basically the individual who would guard the fire, and he would be the person responsible to make sure the fire is continuously igniting and being lit up. So he says, until one time, my father had purchased a land outside of our village. He purchased a piece of land, and he wanted to build a project over there. He wanted to build something on that land. So he would go almost every single day. He would leave the village and come back, working on that land, making sure that, he had workers over there, but making sure that it was being built up properly, everything good, until one day, for some reason, he couldn't go. He got preoccupied with his work inside the village, the father of Salman, and he couldn't go, so he had asked me to go along with one of our slaves that we had, or servants, to go to that land and to overlook it. And this was the first time probably Salman left his village. That's why his father had to send with him the servant to show him the way to that piece of land outside of the village, just so he could go and overlook the workers and make sure everything's being done properly. So Salman said that my father came to me and told me, I want you to go and overlook the property that we're building up. So he said, okay. So he said, I left, and as I got closer to the area that I was supposed to go to, I noticed there was a house of worship. A house of worship. It was a church at that time. He didn't know it was a church though. He said, I just noted a house, and I noticed some sounds were coming out of that house that sounded different than what I'm accustomed to. This is before he got to the land, and he left early in the morning. So he said, I stopped by, I went inside that house, I opened the door, and I heard something totally different that I've never heard. And I got to know the people. I started asking, and I spent the entire day with them, and I learned that they were Christians. They were Christians, and they said that we believe in a God that created everything, and they didn't believe in the fire that I believed in. This is Salman saying now, saying that they believed in something that I didn't even know. You know, he grew up his whole life worshiping the fire. The fire is God. Here he is now in a church. He's hearing people saying different words. They're reading different things. They're saying God is one. He created everything. He created the fire. He created the ocean. He created the earth. He said, I liked what I heard. And I spent the entire day in the church, and I didn't even get a chance to go to the property that my father sent me to. At nighttime, he said, I went back. And when I got back, I told my father, my father asked me, how was your trip? What happened with the property? And he's not a young boy by the way at that time. He's, probably somewhere in his teens or early 20s, a young man. He told his father that I actually didn't go to the property, and I stopped by a house on the way there, and I learned of a new religion that's much better than ours. He's telling his father right now. He said, no. His father said, there cannot be a religion better than ours. He said, yes, this religion calls to worship one God. And he started telling him some of the stuff that he heard at the church. So then his father said, you know what? You will never, ever leave the house again. Because he loved him so much, and he was a religious person himself, his father. He was afraid that his son, Salman, would leave his religion. So he actually locked him up inside the house. He put him kind of like under house arrest. He was still spoiled in the house and everything, but he couldn't leave the house at all. Until one day Salman was able to write a letter and send it with some of the servants or some of the people to the people that he met in the church. And he told them that he had actually learned while he was there that the main place of this religion is Bilad al-Sham, is the Middle East. The Middle East is like the hub of Christianity at that time. So he wrote a letter to the people that he met in the church. He told them, if any of you get a chance to go to the Middle East, to Bilad al-Sham, let me know. I would like to go there. So once somebody replied to him and they told him that at this day, at this moment, we're going to be leaving. There's a caravan that's leaving to Bilad al-Sham. If you'd like to go, come. So he ran out of his house. He left everything and he went to this caravan and he went to Bilad al-Sham. Now, before we move on, I just want to take a quick moment to think of what's happening right now. Here's Salman al-Farisi, a person who was born with every single thing he ever wanted. All the luxuries in life were at his disposal, rich. His father loved him. His father was an authority in the city he lived in. He was Salman himself was the keeper of the fire and everything. And now all of a sudden he is leaving all of this behind with nothing. He's leaving with just his clothes to a land that he's never been to, he's never even heard of in the first place, to go just to learn about this religion. Just to go learn about this religion. That's it. Nothing else. He doesn't even know who he's going to stay with over there. He doesn't even know how he's going to eat, how he's going to survive. He's just going to learn about this religion of Christianity that really grabbed his attention and that he saw was better than worshiping the fire. So when they got to Bilad al-Sham, to the Middle East, he immediately went to a few churches in the area and he asked them, who is the most knowledgeable person in this city about Christianity? Who's the most knowledgeable person in the city? They told him, go to so-and-so, the priest or archbishop or so-and-so, and he went. He went to this person, the most knowledgeable in that city, as the people told him. They told him he's the most obedient to God, and he's the most knowledgeable. He went to him, and he told him his story. He told him, I came from Persia, and I have nothing, but what I would like to do is I would like to become your servant. I would like to serve you, to work for you as a servant, to stay in the house and serve you, and to learn from you. I don't want money in return. I don't want you to pay me for me serving you. I just want to serve you and learn from you. Now, sometimes, subhanAllah, this is hard for us to understand. Imagine a person going from where he was in his status to going to becoming a servant, a person who was being served in his household. And he lived in a castle himself. When he needed something to eat, a cup of water, whatever it is, it would come to him without him having to move for it. To going to a place where he is serving others. He is serving a person for the sake of what? For the sake of searching for the truth. For searching for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He went and he told him yes. And he stayed with that person for a while. However, he told Abdullah ibn Abbas, he said that person was the worst person I've ever met. Now the people around him told him, this is the best person. He said he was the worst person I ever met. And he said the reason is that he used to always encourage people to donate for the poor and to donate for the needy. And when they would donate, he said he would collect all the donations. People would entrust him with the money this religious person, in their eyes. They would entrust him with all the money, and then he said he would take it all for himself, and he wouldn't give it to the poor, because he served them. He was inside his castle with them, so he saw everything that he was doing. So then time passed, and this person died. This priest or archbishop that he was serving passed away. When he passed away, the entire people of the city gathered, and they wanted to hold a huge burial for him. Salman, however, told them, no, this person is the worst person ever. And they didn't believe him. He told them this person does 1, 2, 3, that he steals, he collects the money, and he keeps it for himself. They said, no way, that's impossible. We don't believe you. He told them, wait and give me a minute. And he took a few of them to the place where he would hide the money, and they dug and they extracted, buckets of gold and coins and money that this priest would go and hide under the ground that he collected from the people. When they when they saw this, then the people of the city threw his body in the river, and they didn't even bury him properly. After that, now I want you another moment to think about something. If you were in Salman's place, what would happen to you right now? If you just experienced this. A lot of us, by the way, would have been at that moment, you know what? These people are a bunch of liars. This religion that I was following, or I thought it was the truth. Here's the most religious person. He ended up stealing. Let me just carry my stuff, pack my stuff, go back to Persia, live my life, right? He followed this religion with the notion, him thinking that this is, what he was searching for. And the first person he met, the first teacher he had, the most knowledgeable person that he met, that the people entrusted, turned out to be a thief and a liar. A lot of people at that moment said, you know what, forget it. SubhanAllah, you'll see a lot of people, and you'll hear this a lot from the older generation generally, actually, not the youth as much. You'll hear them saying that, oh, so such and such person that's religious or claims to be religious steals or lies or does or whatever, and that's an excuse for the people not to come to the masjid or not to go somewhere. You'll hear this from people. I've heard this from people. Why don't you come to the masjid? Oh, yeah, those people at the masjid, some of them claim to be religious, but you don't know them. They do 1, 2, 3, and 4. A lot of people do that. Here's a lesson from Salman's story. If your goal of coming to the masjid, or if your goal of coming to an Islamic lecture or learning knowledge, if your goal is that person that you're learning from, then that's where your mistake is. But if your goal is, if you're searching for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then nothing should prevent you from that regards. So after this person dies, going back to the story, Salman doesn't go back. He asks around, who's the most knowledgeable person after him now? After this person died, who would you recommend me to go to? What they did is they hired another priest instead of the person that died, and they told him, this person is the most knowledgeable, study under him. So he went to this priest and he told him the same thing. I want to serve you and learn from you as well. So the priest told him, yes, go ahead and you could serve me. And he stayed with him for a while. And he said that this person was by far the best person he has met before that period. That this now priest that now he's studying with, he said he was the best person. He was kind, he had good manners, good character, and he taught him religion. At the end of his time, when this person was dying, Salman asked him that after you die or after you pass away, who do you recommend me to go and study under? Who do I go to learn the truth about Allah, about God? This priest told him, I do not know anybody on the face of the earth right now that believes what I believe, except one priest that lives in Mosul. Mosul is a city in Iraq, and he lived in Sham. So after this priest died, Salman went from Sham to Al-Mosul, to Iraq. Now remember, he started off in Persia. He went to Sham, studied with one priest. That priest died. Went to another priest. That priest died. Now he goes to Al-Mosul. The same thing. He goes to Al-Mosul. He tells the priest over there, I want to serve you and learn under you. The priest tells him, yes, you're welcome. He sits there. He learns. He studies under him. At the end of his life of this priest, while he's on his deathbed, Salman asks him the same thing. Who can I study under? Who could teach me more about this religion? He tells him, I do not know anybody that knows as much as I do, except another person in a city called Nasbin, I believe, or Nasabin. It's another city in Iraq. So after this priest dies, Salman leaves and goes to that city and goes to that priest and tells him the same thing. And he starts studying under him. Then when that priest is on his deathbed, Salman asks him the same thing. Who should I study under? He tells him, I don't know anybody except one person who lives in Al-Ammuriyya. Al-Ammuriyya is a city that was in the Roman Empire. And after that person dies, Salman leaves all the way to Al-Ammuriyya. Now think about it, and I want to recap real quickly. He went from Persia to Sham. He met a horrible person who died. He studied under another person. He left Sham to Mosul in Iraq. Then he left Mosul to another city in Iraq as well. Now he left that city of Nisbin in Iraq to another city in Ammuriya. Over 5 cities. And we're not talking, by the way, we're not talking about he would go spend a month or 2 in each city. Because what he's studying under people until they die. So we're talking about years passing by. So nobody knows the exact number, but you could say at least an estimate if he spent, let's say 3 years on average in each place, that's 15 years he spent in this journey. Going from the spoiled youth living in the luxurious lifestyle to being a servant of five to six different individuals traveling these areas just for the sake of searching for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now when he was in Ammuriya, under this priest he was studying with, and when this priest was dying, he asked him, who should I study under after you? Now this priest told him, my son, I do not know anybody on the face of this earth right now that follows what I follow. I'm the last person on earth that believes what I believe. And what he believed was the original Christianity, the original message of Christianity, the true message that Isa alayhi salam came down with. He told him, however, in our books, we believe that there will come a final prophet. And this final prophet will come from the Arabian land, from the Arabian Peninsula. And he will migrate to a land of dates and palm trees and between rocks. That's what he said, that these are the signs he's giving. So this prophet, there will be a prophet at the end of times that will come from the land of the Arabs, from the Arabian Peninsula. This prophet will migrate to an area that's filled with palm trees, and this area is in between 2 huge rocks or 2 huge mountains. And he said that this prophet has 3 signs. He does not accept charity. He does not take charity for himself. However, he accepts gifts. He doesn't accept charity. That's the first sign. The second sign is he accepts gifts. And the third sign is he has a birthmark, you could say, which is the mark of the prophethood, the seal of prophethood, that's in between his shoulders on his back. 3 signs he gave him. And he told him he'll be from the Arabian Peninsula and that he will migrate to a land of palm trees and between rocks. And this priest told him that I believe that his time is near, that his time is coming up right now. So after this priest dies, Salman right now is in the Arabian Peninsula, or in Ammuriya. What he does is he starts working, and he builds up a little bit of wealth. He buys some sheep, some goats, and he starts trading, and he gathers a little bit of wealth. Now, when he gathered some wealth, he goes to a caravan, to business caravans. He says, you know what? I want to go from here to the Arabian Peninsula, to the land of the Arab. Who will take me with you? So these caravans said, we'll take you, but how much will you pay? So Salman says, I'll give you my goats and my sheep and my cows and everything I own. I will give it to you just for you to take me from here, from Ammuriya, from the Roman Empire, to the Arabian Peninsula. So they said, you know what, we'll take you. So he gets on this caravan. After they move and they enter the Arabian Peninsula, what do? Who knows what happens to him? Anybody? They take him as a slave. They trick him. They take him, they tie him up, they take his money and everything, and then they sell him as a slave. They come across merchants in a business district. They say, we have a slave that's from the Roman Empire. He's original Persian who would like to purchase him, and they sell him. And they sell him to a Jewish man who lived between the Middle East and the Arabian Peninsula. He lived in an area between that. He didn't live in the Arabian Peninsula. They sold him as a slave to this man. Salman says, when I went with this man, when I entered the city, I saw some palm trees. So the first thing that he thought of was what when he saw the palm tree? What's preoccupying his mind right now? The last prophet, right? And the signs. So he says, I saw some palm trees, so I thought that I am in the city that the priest told me about. So he said, I was fine with being a slave. I want you to seriously imagine a man going from living a king lifestyle to now being a slave. And he could have had the chance to run away, to go back to his family, to whatever. However, he was on a quest for searching for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if we compare that to our lifestyle, how many of us search for Allah? We don't need to. We have the Quran. Salman had to travel for years to become a servant and become a slave just to learn about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And all me and you need to do is just pick up a copy of the Quran, or go on YouTube to an Islamic lecture and learn about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, we find it hard. If I tell you read 1 hour of the Quran every single day, it gets boring, it gets tough, I can't read, I can't focus, my mind's all over the place. That's the lesson we could learn from Salman. Look at the hardship he went through to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to learn about the religion of Islam. And look what we have to do. Everything's in between our hands, whether it's our smartphone, our computer, the Quran, the masjid. We just could come to the masjid whenever there's a talk, whenever there's a youth program. All we have to do is come to the masjid to learn about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and sometimes we lazy out. Look at how much people are now coming Ramadan in the first 5-10 days of Ramadan. Now come on the 20th day of Ramadan, and you'll find how the masjid will decrease in numbers. Why? Because people then will get to find it hard. And here's Salman, who traveled for years and years searching for the truth. He left his everything searching for the truth. Right now, when you come to some of the sisters, you tell them, sister, put on a hijab. No, it's tough. I can't. My friends, my family, they say, why are you putting on the hijab? You're still young. Salman left all that behind. If you come to a sister right now, tell her, sister, you shouldn't be putting up makeup in public in front of brothers. I can't. It's tough. I have to. My friends do it. We could always find excuses for ourselves. The brothers, you could tell them, your companionship is very bad. Your friends are very bad. Yeah, but they're my bros, man. I grew up with them, man. They're my guys. I can't. It's tough. The guys are telling, let's go to a hookah bar. Let's go to smoke some argila. Man, I can't say to them. They'll look at me as, what are you afraid of? You're afraid of your dad, or what's wrong with it? You don't want to feel an outcast. Here's Salman, who left everything, his family, his wealth, his lifestyle, everything for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah made his journey long. Allah could have made his journey short. But subhanAllah, the longer you try and the longer you struggle for something, once you reach it, the more sweetness and pleasure you'll have in it. Yes or no? Can't you attest to that? If you sit there and work for something very hard and you put in your time and your effort and you accomplish it, you'll feel that sweetness in it. So Salman, now going back to the story, is with this Jewish man. This Jewish man sells him to his cousin. His cousin once came and he bought Salman. Imagine, now he's a slave to this Jewish man. This Jewish man sells him to his Jewish cousin as well, who's from a different place. And this place is where? Is Medina. The cousin of the owner of Salman who bought him, he went and he took him back to Medina. Salman says, as soon as I entered Medina, I saw palm trees all over the place. Palm trees were filled. Way more than the other city that I was in. So the first thing he did is what? He told his owner, can you give me just some time to go and look around the city just to get to know the city? What did he want to do? What did Salman want to do? He wanted to see if the city was surrounded by mountains. Because remember, those are the signs of the city. So his owner told him, yes, go ahead. Go walk around the city, get to know the city. Salman says, I left. The first thing I went is to the outskirts of the city I'm in, of Medina, to see if it was surrounded by mountains. And indeed, it was surrounded by mountains on all three sides, except one side, and it was filled with palm trees. So he said, at that moment, I knew that I was in the city that the priest had told me the prophet would migrate to. So for this reason, he said, I continued to work with my owner. I didn't run away. I didn't even want to free myself or anything, just waiting for this prophet to come. Until one time, he says, I was on a palm tree. While I was on a palm tree, I heard my owner beneath me talking to another person about a prophet that had come from Mecca and migrated to Medina. He says, when I heard this, shivers began to run through my spine. He just shivered. Because this is what he's been searching for. Imagine you've been wanting something for 20 years. So sometimes we want something, if we don't get it the next day, we're like, oh. If we want something, we don't get it in a month. Come on. Salman was searching for this thing for 20 years. Imagine how he felt at that moment when he heard that the prophet came. And I'll finish with the story of the prophet. So when he heard him, the first thing he wanted to go meet the prophet. So he left and he would work during the day, and at nighttime, when it's night, he's supposed to be sleeping, resting for the next day, because he's a slave again. He's not a he's a slave. He would go out of the house. The first time he took some dates with him. He took some dates and he went and he met the prophet, was sitting in Qiba amongst some Sahaba. And he asked around, he said, who's this? Who's the prophet? And they told him that's him. So he went to him and he seen him sitting against some Sahaba sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and he went and he said, I heard that you have come from another city, from Mecca, along with your companions, and I heard that you're in need, that you're all of you are poor right now, you're in need. So I brought some dates for you as charity to eat from. And he gave him a bag or a bucket of dates. And he said the Prophet ﷺ took these dates, he put it on the ground, and he told all of his Sahaba or the companions, come and join me and eat. And he said all of them ate except him. He didn't eat anything. So then Salman said, what? The first sign is correct. What was the first sign? That the Prophet does not take charity for himself. So he said that a few days passed until I was able to work and buy some more dates and some food. And I went back to the Prophet. This time the Prophet was in the Medina itself. At first he was in Qiba, on the outskirts of Medina. Now the Prophet, when he entered Medina, he went back to him with some food. Again, the Prophet ﷺ was sitting amongst the Sahaba, and he told them, here's some food. I brought it for you as a gift. And the Prophet ﷺ took the food, he called the Sahaba, and he ate along with the Sahaba this time. So Salman said that the second sign is now correct, that he accepts gifts for himself, but he doesn't accept charity. Then there's one more sign, the seal of prophethood. He said, one time I would go by the Prophet, and he didn't believe in him until now. He's still searching to see if he's truly the Prophet or not. He said, I would try to find, if there's a way I could look in his shoulder, but he's always wearing, the abaya, and it's impossible for me to see. And he didn't want to go straight up to him and tell him, can I see your back? Can I see this the seal of prophethood? He said, until one time there was a burial. There was somebody passed away, and they went on a janaza, on a burial. And when you're burying somebody, you're going to have to go in the ground, and sometimes you'd have like the abaya on you, it would fall off, and all of that. So he said, I went directly behind the Prophet, and the whole time the Prophet is moving around, I'm trying to take a glimpse inside his back to see if I could see the seal of prophethood, which is a birthmark. He said, I wasn't able to see it. However, the Prophet himself, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, recognized that I was trying to see something, so he understood. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam understood, and he said, at that moment, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam lowered his garment for me. He was behind him, so that I could see the seal of prophethood. He said, as soon as I seen it, I immediately jumped at the Prophet, hugging him, started kissing his hand, and believed in the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This was his quest to Islam. And again, think of what Salman had to go through, and think what you have to go through, and make the comparison. Think how long he strived. Think about the effort that he put in to get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to know this religion of Islam, and to believe in Islam, and look at everything that we have at our own disposal. And the very beautiful thing about Salman's story, actually, and I'll finish with this, it's very briefly, is that at the time of Umar bin al-Khattab, when Umar bin al-Khattab opened a lot of Islamic areas, a lot of the lands became Muslim, Umar appointed Salman to be the governor of where? Who knows? It's called al-Madain, the city or the area that Salman came from, which was Persia. When Umar opened the Persian Empire, he sent Salman as the governor. Imagine, he left with nothing at all for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now he returned to his people as a scholar, as a companion. Not only was he a companion, the Prophet ﷺ used to say that Salman minna alul bayt. Salman is amongst from the family of the Prophet. Imagine, once the Sahaba were saying, and so-and-so would say, I'm from this family, so-and-so would say, I'm from this family, saying what tribes and families they're from. So when it came to Salman, they asked him, where are you from? He said, Al-Islamu abi wa ummi, that Islam is my father and my mother. And when this reached the Prophet ﷺ went and grabbed Salman's hand and rose it in front of all the companions, and he told them that Salman is from the family of the Prophet. Salman is not from the Muhajirin, and he's not from the Ansar. He's from the family of the Prophet ﷺ. And this was an honor for Salman, for somebody that strove his entire life to get to know the Prophet and to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This was one of his rewards. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable all of us, inshallah, to strive to get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala better, to improve our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to worship Allah as best as we can. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wal 'asr, innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa 'amilus salihat wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. Jazakumullahu khair. Assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.